It is time for Operation Get Fucking Massive. The aim is simple: to make this the most productive push-up yet and to get as big as fucking possible. After a lengthy health phase to reset, I am ready to finally begin my push-up. And this will be the last push-up I'll ever do before I prep next year for my debut season as a pro. I'm starting at a weight of roughly 240 to 241 pounds. I'm aiming to push up for roughly 30 weeks. So I have to ensure that my body can sustain this push-up for that duration. So this approach is going to be different for that exact reason. Admittedly, in the past, I've pushed up too heavy and cut my off seasons short because my body became unresponsive because of poor recovery and high stress. I've made off seasons harder than they need to be and a lot less productive than they could have been. I've always thought that I need to really push up my weight, and if I keep my PEDs low, then that would keep me healthy. No. Now, getting heavy has probably served me in the past when I was much lighter, but when you get to a certain size and a certain body weight, that is going to put unnecessary stress on the body. When you push up heavy, your blood pressure gets too high, your heart rate also gets too high, your body fat and visceral fat get high as well, and your insulin sensitivity becomes poor. And that results in poorer nutrition partitioning, poorer response to PEDs, and more stress in the body and needing to pull back. I've not been able to sustain a decent push-up for that reason because I've constantly had to reset. Having that middle ground is what's going to keep this push-up very productive. Now, it's important to note that the effects of PEDs is what causes the issues, i.e. higher blood pressure, poor lipids, and blunting your insulin sensitivity. So by keeping these markers in check via being more diligent with body weight increases, staying on the leaner side, keep your fitness in a good place through consistent expenditure and optimizing recovery through stress management, good sleep, and appropriate training volume, it will allow me to run relatively higher PEDs, push up for longer, and be healthier. So this phase is going to be ran with more diligence, like I say, but I'm also going to document this so you guys can see how I do it, and also that in itself will keep me more accountable, because this is an approach that I have taken with my clients and I've got great results, but I have been a bit of a sucker for not following my own advice, which it can easily be done when you're coaching yourself. It can be harder to remain objective. So by documenting it all and tracking everything more thoroughly and having second eyes as well and second opinions that I trust, that's going to help keep me accountable to the objectivity needed to make sure that this goes to plan, because this has to go to plan. After my check of photos, I've realized that I am behind where I should be if I want to be successful in my debut season as an IFBB Pro. So I'm going to give you a rundown of where I'm currently at and also the plan of action moving forwards for Operation Get Fucking Massive. To review my health phase, it's gone well, but there was one marker that was very unideal, to say the least, that has made the past few months an absolute shitter and was really taken away from how effective this health phase should be. Now, my bloods are in a great place, so inflammation markers were excellent. My blood sugar control was also very good with fasting glucose. My HbA1c and insulin sensitivity are all looking healthy. My iron status is within range. My blood count looked good overall. My hemoglobin was 170. Hematocrit was 48.3%. And there were no major concerns there. My kidney function looked mostly okay, although creatinine was elevated at 126. For someone carrying a decent amount of muscle mass and train hard, that is not unusual. That is going to be elevated. Liver enzymes were mildly elevated, AST at 60 and ALT at 57. However, my CK was over 1,100, which strongly suggests a lot of that is coming from muscle damage and training rather than liver dysfunction. Bilirubin, GGT, and fibrosis markers all looked good. The main issue that made this a shitter was my hormones. So get this right. My testosterone came back at 2.5 with LH and FSH both heavily suppressed, meaning that the gear that I was using was shit. So for context of what I did in regards to PEDs for my health phase, I de-escalated down to 125 milligrams of test for 4 weeks, and then for 4 weeks after that, I increased to 200 milligrams of test and 200 milligrams of Primo. So I should have been well within range of my testosterone. That explains why I look flat in the photos, why my performance has been not ideal, my mood has been, not great, and why I've just essentially felt like an asexual robot. Fucking terrible. Just diabolical, really. This is why you should get your gear checked with, or at least see lab results, because there's a lot of fake shit going around. I've since then gone to a very reliable source and got that shit sorted out. But this is also why you do blood work. So not only you can see where your health is, but also it can give you an understanding of if what you're running is good, essentially. My estradiol was actually within range. My prolactin was normal. Thyroid function was also normal, and cortisol was normal as well. And PCA was low and healthy. Lipids were improved, but HDL is still a little bit out of range at 0.8, and that's something that I'll continue to monitor and work on. But the important thing is the LDL was in a good place. So my cholesterol overall was healthy. So overall, the health phase did exactly what I wanted it to do. My inflammation was improved, my iron was improved, my blood sugar control was excellent, meaning I'm very insulin responsive, and I can uptake carbs very well, ready for a nice push-up with food, and most health markers looked really good. The biggest takeaway from these bloods was, again, the unexpected low testosterone. But on top of that, my fasted blood pressure is 108/65 with a resting heart rate at 61. A really great place to push up from in regards to my health markers. And the testosterone situation is very easily rectified. On a non-training day, 3,841 calories with 326 grams of protein, 472 grams of carbs, and 67 grams of fats. My training day is 3,952 calories with 294 grams of protein, 593 grams of carbs, and 45 grams of fats. I started a little bit higher with the calories, but I noticed that my body weight was creeping up a little bit too fast, and I'm aiming for roughly 1 pound gain on average per week. Any more of that is most likely going to be fat gain. The aim is to add only good weight as I go forwards, and again, that's going to help ensure that I stay in a gaining phase for as long as possible. That is your best opportunity to gain as much muscle as you possibly can. And to be honest, in the beginning of this, I should be recomping and my composition should improve as the PEDs kick in from being heavily suppressed. So food doesn't really need to be super high to begin with anyway. And as training output increases through getting stronger, that will increase the demand for food, and that will suggest when to increase the foods that carry on fueling good performance. The difference from how I would usually split my macros is the protein is higher and the fats are lower. As an assisted bodybuilder, the fats are better kept lower because It will help keep your lipids in a decent place, but also carbs are going to be your main source of energy. And carbs are the second most anabolic macro behind protein. So it makes sense that carbs and protein are kept higher. For training, I'm running push, pull, legs, rest, back and chest, torso, arms and legs, otherwise known as limbs, torso and limbs, and rest. So that's going to be a 5-day training week with about 11 to 12 working sets on each training day. This will be a while since I've ran a 5-day training split, but the aim is to keep volume low per session with everything being trained twice a week. Whereas previously I was doing much larger sessions with less training days, and that was actually taken away from the quality of the sessions and my ability to consistently keep performance high. So the objective with this training is to grow everywhere, but with a small bias to arms. I don't really need much specificity because the main thing is just adding size everywhere. I don't think I'd need to change volume really, because the strength increase will increase my volume via increased output anyway. Now, let's talk PEDs. Do not copy what I do. This is not advice. I'm not a doctor, etc. I've started with 357 milligrams of Test E and 750 milligrams of Mast E per week. And over the next 2 weeks, I'll escalate up to 500 milligrams of Test and 1.5 grams of Mast. This is higher than I would usually run a cycle, but again, I'm going to have more diligence with the health markers to ensure that the effects of the PEDs are managed. I am going to hold that amount for 4 weeks and then assess, as with it being an anthay that I will be using, that ester will take 4 weeks for it to peak. So it makes sense to hold, and if there is a plateau with performance, then potentially consider an escalation. I've got a 2-to-1 ratio with Mast and Test to help keep estrogen under control, and Mast is one of the lesser toxic compounds that you can take. I've found also the least issues with that compound, and it makes sense to stick with what works and also keeps my blood work in check. Every time I've used something different to a test and a DHT derivative blast, it just creates issues. So again, just stick with what works. Now, I'm going to be using 10 IU of Lantus for blood glucose control. I'll be taking that fasted in the morning, and pre-bed I'll be taking 10 IU of HGH. Now, this is the highest I've ran HGH at, but the incentive behind using it will help with my ability to partition food better towards muscle growth, and it will assist with recovery. So I'm going to see how I get on with that amount so far, and keeping my electrolyte balance in check is going to help with the uptake of a higher use of HGH. Potentially at some point, I might consider an escalation. Maybe. I'm also using peptides alongside this. I might cover that in another video. But in regards to the physique, I wasn't super happy with the starting point because, again, I do look flat and, to be honest, a little downsized to where I should be. But considering I've had no test for God knows how long, I think it's retained pretty well. And again, it's a decent starting position to grow, lean enough to grow. So the rebound off the back of this should be pretty good with the plans in place that we have. We should notice a decent switch up in the physique over the next few months, which I'm pretty excited about. So realistically, this should be the worst I look, to be honest. So that's the current POA for Operation Get Fucking Massive. Stay tuned, because like I say, I'll be documenting it all, and I'll catch you for the next vid. Too easy.